Children tend to be more joyful in life. We like to think that having children will bring us happiness. But sometimes adults are very much intrigued by their unusual behaviors. This little kid was one such situation, but with a very strange plot twist. Out of the blue and without any reason, he decided that it would be a good idea to put a pencil in his ear. Little did he know it was a matter of fact something very worse. Some children are interested in knowing a lot of things for no other reason. They're knows for their curiosity. So they have the tendency to insert small foreign objects into their ears in order to experiment everything around them and learning what happens when they try different things. Louis King was no longer a child, so nobody, and most certainly not even his grandmother, expected him to do such things or to tell her what he was about to say. The studies show that children under the age of 4 years old are the most at risk to develop a habit of sticking small objects into their ears, eyes, and noses. But it seems like some others outgrow this habit in a very short amount of time. Some of the most common objects are food like popcorn, dried peas, watermelon seeds, and chocolate-covered nuts. In the case of Louis, he chose to stick a pencil sub in his ear, which for him seemed a very easy thing to do, but he didn't expect it to be so hard to take out. The whole story took place when Louis's granny, Sheila King, was babysitting him. It was something very unusual that she would look after him like she always did while his mom was away at work. It was an ordinary habit to the family, but it's still a huge responsibility to take care and look after a very active toddler. She had no idea that things could take another turn under her watch. It's most known that the babysitters are frightened when something bad happens while they look after children, and even grandmothers feel the same thing about their grandchildren. In addition, that's why Sheila felt terrible and got so scared when Louis first uttered those words to her. It's not only about the fear of the moment when the accident happens that's hard, but also the anxiety that hits when the parents need to be informed about the situation. Moreover, you never want something disagreeable to take place while you're watching someone else's kid. Sheila's daughter would never forgive her if something wrong happened to her beloved Louis while under her mother's watch. But most definitely, that's exactly what happened. Louis was completely silent and doing some coloring in his room. Although she should have known that a silent child is certainly up to something. Everything was quiet when it happened, and the situation could have been evitable if she'd been watching him closely. But a 10-year-old child cannot be observed all the time. Sheila only found out what Louis did when he started to complain about a severe pain in his ear, and if he didn't tell her, it really could have some serious repercussions. She immediately started to look into his ears, but she couldn't see anything. Everything was dark, especially because she didn't have any tools on hand. So Sheila quickly got her things gathered up and followed the emergency plan. The question is, would she make it in time? As soon as the grandmother started to look into Louis's ear, he began to cry and fuss with his ear, especially when she couldn't see anything. He was panicking also and realized shortly after that the situation's very serious. She almost had to hold his hands down as he clawed at his face as he was panicking. The pain got much worse. Sheila knew immediately that it was about time to go to the emergency room. Eventually, Sheila made it to the emergency room with the little boy in tow. He started to cry and couldn't comprehend the full implications of what he had done, therefore he was very anxious. It didn't take long for the doctor to arrive so they can hear what he had to say. Dr. Philip Russell was the doctor on rotation that day. He took a look into Louis's ear, but it didn't take long for him to realize that he'll be needing much more sophisticated tools to identify where the pencil nub was. His ear was completely blocked. Louis tried to stay put as the doctor inspected his ear. It seems like it was a long wait with unknown prognosis. The pencil was entered so deep in Louis's ear that the process took much longer than expected to get the object out of his ear. It was a very hard procedure, but Dr. Russell managed to do the impossible. He asked Louis to not move and hold still as he took off the dangerous piece of wood and graphite from deep inside his ear's canal. However, as the piece came up to the boy's ear, everyone was amazed because it looked nothing like a pencil at all. The doctor was stunned how much this boy could enter the object into his ear, while his grandmother was sitting there in shock, shaking her head and looking horrified. The doctor shortly after asked Louis if that was the whole thing that came out of his ear or just a part of it. Louis answered him and said he thinks that was all of it. But then again, Dr. Russell wasn't 100% certain and satisfied with what Louis said, So he took another look in his ear. As he tilted the boy's head again, what he saw just inside left the doctor feeling very uneasy. A tiny, round, and rather wide object balances in the doctor's forceps. Louis was feeling very relieved in his head and turned as soon as the object was out. Everyone in the room also took a look at what the doctor found, and they were all stunned, even the grandmother. It turned out that the pencil in his ear was actually a whole battery. Dr. Russell said the object looked like a watch battery, so he asked Louis again if he was sure about the pencil, but it seemed like he wasn't anymore. Louis didn't think that it actually was a pencil. The doctor explained that having a pencil stuck in his ear was a very serious and dangerous thing. The risks are very much threatening, and he could have a deep-rooted infection that could affect his hearing, and in some cases even lead to him being deaf. Louis was very much lucky to have a skilled doctor who was able to take the object right out of his ear. The doctor couldn't see Louis's eardrum anymore, which meant it's gone because he made a hole in it. The doctor talked to the grandmother and told her that this wasn't repairable, but it will repair itself with time. Fortunately, though, the eardrum is much like skin and will grow back naturally within 6 weeks. According to Louis, the assumed-to-be pencil was stuck in his ear not that day, but a whole week before that. He must have started getting a pain in his ear, so he attempted to get it out, but little did he know, he was doing the opposite and forcing it in deeper. Either way, the grandmother admitted that she didn't have any idea where Louis had this from and how all this happened to her while being under her watch. Actually, it was a very common thing to have children who insert objects into their own ears and eyes and even other kids' eyes and noses. But the twisted thing in this story is thinking that the object was a pencil that turned out to later be a battery. Moreover, while a pencil sounds super stabby and dangerous, it's actually way better than a battery because, while it's left there unchecked, could leak acid, which can lead to very complicated things. Dr. Russell said that kids inserting things in their ears is a very usual thing to deal with, but the surprising part was finding out later that the object was a watch battery. But they saw something like this before Louis. A girl came in with a bloody nose, was discovered to have put a clothespin in there. The whole situation appeared on BBC's television series Bizarre ER, and the grandmother and her grandson agreed way before they knew what was really happening in there. Since then, they were watched by 19,155,344 views, and that's only on YouTube. The story was strange, and what was way more stranger was the fact that the boy thought it was a pencil. So we have to ask ourselves, were there some other objects that he inserted into his nose or ear that he managed to get out alone without any help? On the other hand, was he just scared of getting in trouble if he said it was a battery? It seems like after this, the boy will be keeping a lot of secrets to himself, but the most important thing is learning a lifetime lesson, and hopefully he wouldn't try something like this again, even if he had to learn this for his poor grandmother's sake.